This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
I finished these fights.
Give me a hell yeah!
Top Rope Nation.
Learn to love it! It's the best thing going today.
This is episode 66 of Top Rope Nation. It's been a newsworthy week in the world of professional wrestling, and we've got a lot to discuss this week. I'm your host, Ryan Drosty, and in a moment I'll be joined by Kyle Ross and a very special guest who will be along for the ride. So we try to just sort out what we've seen in WWE following Extreme Rules, where we're heading with SummerSlam on the horizon, plus some other topics going on in the world of wrestling. But before I get to my co-host this evening, I do want to say, if you enjoy the show, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe on iTunes, as well as on all of your other podcasting platforms. You can check out the entire archive at topropenation.com, of course, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, and even YouTube. So, to get things started, let me throw it out to Cleveland, Ohio. Welcome my longtime co-host. He is the master of trolling Skip Bayless on Twitter. Mr. Kyle Ross in the house. What's going on, Kyle?
I haven't done that in a while.
I was trying to think of like a nickname I could give you. If you remember our early shows, I'd always introduce you with some kind of weird tagline like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, just for some reason it came to my mind, your Skip Bayless tweets.
Oh, I can only hope today that I bring the passion that you brought toward Iowa Representative.
My God. He did get a mention. Terrible member of the Iowa House of Representatives. Yes, that's a Facebook reference from what's going on my Facebook right now. But thank you for that, Kyle. Thanks for getting his name out there.
I don't like how he looks, I'll be honest.
Hey, well, his policy is much worse than his looks. I can tell you that. That's for sure.
Oh, boy. Politics got hit with the ugly stick, huh?
Yeah, for sure. And this next person I want to introduce, he's a fine-looking gentleman, I've got to say. Looks a lot better than that representative we were talking about there. He's making his return to Top Rope Nation. He is the author of the award-winning book, Crazy Like a Fox, the definitive chronicle of Brian Pillman 20 years later, all the way across the pond in the UK, Mr. Liam O'Rourke. Welcome back to Top Rope Nation. What's going on?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm pleased to be here, and kind of along the same lines as Kyle's. I don't like the way he looks. So we're going to talk about Hulk Hogan now or later.
We are definitely
yeah, there we go.
About Hulk Hogan.
I thought I was going to make that segue.
This is a great start. I think we've probably hooked all of our listeners by now. Obscure politics to Hulk Hogan. What a segue. I love it. But I wanted to say, Liam, you joined us back in March, and we did think it would be a good time to have you on the show again, not just because of your unquestionably great mind for the world of wrestling, which all of you know if you've read his book on Brian Pillman, but because there's been a lot of talk in the wrestling media lately about that book, mostly universal praise, as it should be, but there's been some unwarranted and uninformed criticism from someone who hasn't even read your book. So Kyle addressed that, I thought, pretty well on our show after Extreme Rules this past Sunday night. I did want to give you a chance. I don't want to, drag you down in the mud too much on this subject, but did you have anything at all you wanted to add about what was said about your book on the 83 Weeks podcast?
Oh, tons. I think the thing with I don't think that it'll be able to top Kyle's fantastic kind of diatribe last week. That kind of, when the whole thing went down, obviously, and I heard it for myself, the first thing that kind of went through my head was pretty much everything Kyle said in terms of kind of tackling this head on. And, because I think you can kind of look at it two ways, and it's kind of the way that I've been kind of going back and forth on this for the last week or so now, is like, if you actually take what Bischoff said on that show with any degree of credibility, if you actually look at it like it's an actual debate, I think that you come to the conclusion that Kyle did. And I'm very glad that he did, because, you mentioned they're not trying to kind of bring me down into the mud too much. And really kind of my approach to dealing with it is just kind of sit back and see what everybody else says, because they're probably going to make the judgment for me. And as it turned out, they did. And thank you very much for that. But and if you actually kind of take it with any kind of credibility, like I said, I don't think there's a whole lot there, because it is what it is. What can I say? He starts the podcast off talking about how he's not read the book. He wasn't that close to Brian. He can't remember what year the loose cannon was, so on and so forth. But, it's funny because I think that it irked enough people with how ignorant it was and how kind of misinformed it was and misguided it was that I've had enough people kind of come to me and kind of point things out about Bischoff and his kind of current MO and the MO of his previous podcast that are kind of very, very interesting. And it may end up with me kind of telling you guys something off the air. Not that I want to be that kind of wrestling reporter type guy to tease a scoop or anything like that. But there is a reason why Eric Bischoff is doing the things he's doing. And it's much more than what it is at face value. And it's kind of desperate. I'll leave it at that for now.
Oh, I love it. By the way, was he drunk or high or both on that table for three?
Oh, man, I don't want to insinuate anything. It's just going to come off a personal attack, but it's just,
All right, yeah, that's okay. I don't want to get you in trouble. Yeah. I did have one more thought. So, I made that in passing joke, 83 weeks. I scoffed the name and I said 35 years. Give me Vince McMahon. How's your territory? Last week on the post show. And, I thought about something because I've been watching a lot of WCW recently. And you know what, like the big difference between Vince and Bischoff is, or I think what a great exhibit A to explain the difference between those two is. So, like how Hogan, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit, will always like tell these tall tales about WrestleMania 3. Like, oh God, man, I got in there. The 650-pound Andre. I was just hoping he wasn't going to shoot on me, brother. And like, we all roll our eyes. We're like, come on. And then like, they'll even kick it to Vince for his comments on WrestleMania 3. And he's like, kind of rolling his eyes at the notion, like, yeah, like biggest show of the year. Like, I'm going to let somebody go into business for themselves. Okay. Yeah. Well, Bischoff, his biggest show of all time, Starrcade 97. Not only did he allow Hulk Hogan to go into business for himself against Sting, he encouraged it, apparently, by his own words. And there's the difference between Vince and Eric Bischoff, why one guy is running, a promotion that just, is making billions of dollars right now, stock prices through the roof, and another guy is doing a podcast where he can't remember, what day of the week it is.
Yeah. I think those 83 weeks may have kind of come to a screeching halt shortly after that, if I remember.
Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with that, by the way. Most podcasts, including this one, have a guy who doesn't know what day of the week it is most of the time. But that's
Are you talking about me, Kyle?
No, not at all.
No, I think what's interesting about Bischoff's comments, so I don't know if it's a mixture of his memory just kind of being kind of faulty, because if you have seen him on the WWE Network and they ask him about historical events, he usually just can't remember what was going on at the time. He's just, he just doesn't remember very clearly 20 years ago. And I didn't know if his comments on Liam's book were more just because he doesn't remember clearly, or because he just gets heated thinking about how Pillman just kind of pulled the wool over his eyes. Like Pillman was working him like he was working everyone else, but he was making Bischoff think, he was in on everything, but Pillman was like a level above him. What's your sense there, Liam? Do you think it's anger at the fact that he doesn't want people to know Pillman like got the better of him in that situation, or do you think it's memory, little of both?
I think it's a little of both, and at the same time I think it's neither. I think that when you listen to his show and it comes time to talk about something that somebody else has written about him that might not paint him in the best light, all of a sudden context is king, and he comes out with some fantastic story that only he could have experienced that involves other people doing things that are out of his hands, and he usually comes out smelling of roses, funnily enough. When it comes time for him to lay the story and actually kind of tell the details of what happened on something that hasn't been written about him, all of a sudden context is king becomes I don't remember. Mm-hmm. And there you go. And like I said, at the same time, I think it's neither. I think if you hooked Eric Bischoff up to a lie detector test, I don't think he really genuinely feels that passionate one way or the other about Dave Meltzer, about Bret Hart's book, Chris Jericho's book, my book. I think it's just a gimmick. I think that there's a means to an end on why he's doing what he's doing, and like I said, I've been told that the story's going to come out pretty soon in Elite Places. Not talking about Kenny Omega's show, but I think the story's probably going to come out before too long on why he's doing what he's doing.
It's very interesting. Very interesting teaser there. No, I think the stuff about his memory really came to light to me. I can't remember what the show was. I think we talked about it here on the podcast when it happened, but he was addressing like Montreal and everything that happened with Bret Hart coming into WCW, and they're asking him very direct questions about why Bret wasn't booked better and the circumstances behind his arrival in WCW, and they were like very basic questions, and he essentially said he had no memory or couldn't remember, and it's like, how can you not remember? That was one of the biggest stories of all time, like at the height of the wrestling war. So I don't know.
For the record, I don't have an issue if a guy doesn't remember. Like, I'm not like,
well, that's that's what I was trying to get at.
I mean,
like, if he truly doesn't remember, you can't really blame him.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make for a great podcast if a guy doesn't remember, but at the same time, if you don't look, you were busy. You don't have to remember these things. You're doing it in real time. It was a stressful gig. I get it. So if you just don't remember, you don't remember. But to spin narratives then to cover up, not necessarily to cover up your faulty memory, but to just for the sake of spinning narratives, I think really like, gimmick's got a gimmick, basically, like Liam said. That's silliness.
Yeah. Well, it's he's trying to get a podcast off the ground. He's trying to get some listens, and he decided to attack a book that is probably the only book honest enough to kill Eric Bischoff's blue chew boner.
Oh man, yeah, I don't get it. I don't know how he come out and do so viciously attack a book that you haven't read. It just makes no sense at all. Like, imagine a food critic who's like, let me tell you why this restaurant that I've never ate at just sucks ass. Like, what that doesn't make sense at all. So no, I thought it was odd. We've had you on the show before, and we talked about your book at length on that show. It's one of our better episodes, so you guys can check that out in the archives. It was back, I think, towards the end of March of this year. So
yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, highly recommend Liam's book. You can read it, and I think one of the great things about the comments that came out this week, Liam, were that a lot of the people I saw on Twitter saying, well, this actually really made me want to read the book. So
yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So that's a great byproduct for you of everything that happened on that 83 Weeks podcast. So.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate it. And again, I know that you guys have done a great job of kind of mentioning it in the last few weeks, but I'll do the same. If you want to know what actually is the story, get the book. Simple as that.
Yep.
If you want about Brian Pillman, that's where you go.
There you go. So highly recommended reading. It's a read that you will not be able to put it down. You'll read it in a matter of days, like I did, like Kyle did. So check it out. So we wanted to move on to WWE this week, and everyone's kind of talking about the Raw and SmackDown following Extreme Rules, as they should be. All I can say here about Raw, guys, is square peg, meet round hole, because we are headed for Bobby Lashley versus Roman Reigns next Monday.
I thought this was more Avengers talk.
No way. That would work, though. That description would certainly work. No, we're headed for Bobby Lashley versus Roman Reigns next Monday on Raw again, this time to determine Brock Lesnar's next challenger. And I just feel like there's so many problems with this direction because it kind of renders their match at Extreme Rules just completely useless. I think the prevailing wisdom here is Reigns will win, or possibly we get a triple threat at SummerSlam. But I don't know. When I watched that opening segment and they announced the two...
Oh, dear God, don't do a triple threat, please, no.
Yeah. I'm not usually a big fan of triple threat matches either, I got to say. But I don't know. Maybe that's a way they feel like they can save the match. Because there's no way Reigns-Lesnar is going to go over well in New York. They cannot possibly think that's going to go over well, right?
There's no saving this match. Lashley's not saving this thing. Yeah. He's really not. Like, the thing is now, it's become such a parody of itself that even if they could stick anyone in there, and they're going to find a way, because it's Reigns, because it's Lesnar. It's because it's the expectation of what's going to happen now. It's like, people thought long and hard that, okay, Reigns, Lesnar at WrestleMania. People thought the same thing. It's probably going to be a disaster. And because they think that going in, it kind of, it becomes a reality. And that's I think what's going to happen here. Lashley's not the guy who's going to save this thing. And I like Lashley, but I don't think he's the guy that's going to save this.
Yeah, no, I think the best challenger, I've said on the podcast a lot, I think Rollins would have been the best challenger for Lesnar. I think the fans would have been super into that. He's one of the top baby faces in the company. I think a Rollins title win would really get people amped up, and I just don't think they want to do it because Well, they've been set on the story of Brock and Reigns, and we talked about it on the show months ago. They probably should have just finally pulled the trigger at WrestleMania and got it out of the way, but they continue to drag it on. It drags down Roman Reigns, and I don't know. It's just Reigns, part of the problem with him is obviously the booking and the fact of when he was first pushed, against Daniel Bryan in his heyday, and then ever since then, everyone views it as forced. I was at one time not the biggest Roman Reigns fan. Justin and Kyle kind of converted me to where I kind of like the guy now, mostly because I think a lot of the criticism he gets is very unwarranted, and it makes me like the guy even more. But even I, on Monday night, knew right away where this story was headed with the 2 triple threat matches, and okay, we're getting Reigns, Lashley again for sure. That's how it shook out. And it's like, not again. They're just nailing this up against the wall over and over again, and it's not going to stick. Nobody cares. So, I don't know. Kyle, what did you think Monday night?
Okay. This is, I think, one of those instances of how we evaluate wrestling in the present day, how we can't do it based on 1998 standards. We need to understand what wrestling is in 2018. And this whole situation with the match at Extreme Rules now kind of being an afterthought, and maybe we should have been included into that when they took a match that was originally supposed to close that pay-per-view and moved it into the middle of the show. You have that, these 2 triple threats, and now Reigns Lashley Part 2 coming. The whole thing is just a byproduct of a lot of TV time. That's why this sort of less than stellar storytelling is taking place. They just have a lot of hours to fill. And so they made a match that you thought was kind of important at Extreme Rules. Well, I mean, it still was kind of important. I mean, Lashley beating Roman Reigns, I guess, is a big deal. But because it wasn't framed as a number 1 contender situation, it didn't close the show. It's sort of, its impact was kind of minimized. And the impact was further minimized when they decided, well, okay, those 2 guys are going to be in separate triple threat matches on Raw. The problem with doing that is, and I think you weren't the only one, Ryan, who kind of, had the same feeling, emotion, whatever about this, is when you open it up to other guys like that, the number 1 contender situation, you're only feeding your audience who already has a desire to see someone else and making that desire stronger. Yeah. Like, if you wanted it to be Bobby Lashley, and I don't think it's not going to be Bobby Lashley, it's going to be Roman Reigns, because if they wanted it to be Bobby Lashley, then they should have just had the Extreme Rules match be for the contendership, and he beats Roman Reigns and he's the contender. I mean, it's pretty simple. Mm-hmm. Again, there's a lot of TV time to fill, but it's just as simple as that. With Reigns doing it, I guess you can set up a rubber match down the line for the title, presuming Reigns wins on Monday. But, that's why it goes back to why we thought it was a dumb idea to do a 5-way at Extreme Rules when they initially announced that, because anyone outside of Reigns and Lashley, no one really, okay, maybe people like Seth Rollins a lot and want him, but I don't think people would have bought him winning necessarily in that scenario. So they didn't do it, and I complimented them for not doing it, for just going ahead and doing the Reigns-Lashley one-on-one match. But then they open it back up, and the audience is like, oh, man, I kind of would rather, okay, well, Lashley beat Reigns, but now it's for the contendership, and everyone's in it. I kind of want this guy. And that is kind of a problem, too, because you just basically wasted everyone's week to get back to a match they just saw the previous day that apparently meant nothing. And now we get this match where most people are going to assume Roman Reigns is going to win, and thereby, we get a match that no one wants to see. Yeah. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of a single person who's enthused about that match. And that's sad, because it's supposed to be this big thing, but nobody cares anymore. It's like the Band-Aid philosophy, right? What do they always tell you with the Band-Aid? Just rip that motherfucker. Yep. Just rip that motherfucker off, man. And they're not ripping that motherfucker off. They're just peeling corner by corner, and Vince is like, okay, when we get to that 4th corner, the audience is going to finally be behind this Band-Aid coming off. No, they're not. The idea, not only is the crowd in Brooklyn, and again, I could be wrong, okay? The WrestleMania thing kind of caught me off guard. Maybe that's shame on me. But not only is the Brooklyn crowd not going to be more amenable to a Reigns title change than New Orleans was, there's a very good chance they will be less amenable.
Oh, yeah.
And if they do a triple threat, which is kind of eye-rolling too, the only thing that Bobby Lashley would add is a "you both suck" chant from the crowd would no longer apply because there'd be three guys. I don't know. We'd probably get some new annoying chants.
No, yeah, I think adding Lashley might be their idea of the match won't completely just be uncared about by the crowd. Like, there might be this small belief that Lashley has a chance, or at least he's someone fresh against Lesnar, and they think he can save it with the crowd. I don't think it'll make a huge difference, but because everyone will probably still be thinking Reigns is going to win anyways. But to throw it to Liam here, like we talked about with Reigns and how he's just been buried by the booking committee, by the situations he's been put in that really haven't helped him out with the crowd. Doesn't this booking harm Bobby Lashley too? Because it really just renders his win over Reigns completely meaningless at Extreme Rules. If they go back to have Reigns win next Monday night, what's the point? What do you think, Liam?
It depends. I think a lot of the times wrestling fans, it's a very easy criticism to kind of level at WWE, to kind of that they sometimes book in the moment or book very kind of short-sightedly. And I think as wrestling fans, we're kind of guilty sometimes of doing the same thing, kind of judging things in its isolated incident. And I think back to to me, it's all about what's next. If the follow-up for Lashley is strong, he'll be okay. It's when Strowman was being built up a year and a half ago or whatever, and they had Roman beat him right before WrestleMania, and everyone was like, oh, why would you beat Strowman now? And as it turns out, it didn't really hurt him all that much. The follow-up was strong. They kept pushing him. They kept building him, and they kept the level head, and they did it. To me, with Lashley, it's all in the follow-up. It's more indicative to me of, they're going to do this. It's you guys have, and I'm so glad that you guys have touched on this for the last few weeks, but Roman Reigns as your potentially worst booked top guy in the history of the company just did another job on pay-per-view 1 month before he's going to challenge and supposedly beat Brock Lesnar. Let's take the kind of the diehard WWE fan who hates Roman element out of this and just pretend that there's a casual fan audience that actually we're going to try and get Roman over to. It's they're seeing that too. It's I don't think that, I can't think of another top guy that's been treated this way. Rock was the only one who did as many jobs, but even Rock was able to kind of recover with his just natural charisma, and he could just kind of win all that goodwill back after he loses to the boss man on television by doing one great promo. But Roman doesn't have that, and because he doesn't have that, it really exposes him massively as a guy they just don't think is fit for the role, even more so than he already may be in reality.
Yeah, and Rock wasn't fighting the audience either. I mean, for Rock, It was just easy. The Rock, he had a audience that wanted to cheer him anyway, so it was much easier for him to get away with doing jobs.
Yeah, this is just compounding the problem.
Yeah, would they have been better off just going, since this Roman Brock thing has been beaten to death? Would they have been better off going with Lashley beating Reigns, Lashley versus Brock, Lashley beats Rock, and then Roman chases Lashley, and if he beats Lashley, then he essentially conquers both of them, rather than going head-to-head with Brock again in the match that nobody wants to see?
See, that's tough because you do have to have Roman beat Brock Lesnar at this point. I think, as much as no one really wants to see it.
It's why they should have done it months ago.
Yeah. Yes, that's the problem.
Yeah.
You're in a situation where you have to do something, but no one really wants to see it anymore. It will just come across as so anticlimactic. And it's not it never was going to be the crowning babyface achievement they wanted it to be, ever. I don't think there's ever a time. I take that back. If you go back 2.5 years ago to the WrestleMania in Cowboy Stadium, I always thought, had they kept the title on Roman when he won it from Sheamus, if you remember, and he had the crowd behind him in Philadelphia. How's it going, Bill Matz, by the way?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Good reference.
And not had him do that dumb thing where he put it up in the Rumble and Triple H got it. Had they just kept the title on Roman and had Brock Lesnar, who, if I'm getting my who had never been pinned for the title, be his challenger. Like Brock could have just won a quote unquote standard Royal Rumble where it's for the number one contendership, and Roman beats Brock there. I think that would have worked a lot better than this delayed coronation.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's actually a really great point, because the fact that he did get cheered in Philadelphia, which is where he famously got booed with The Rock in the ring with him, and they had flipped on him. That was maybe the one point where they really could have got it rolling behind Roman. I agree with that. That's a good take.
Yeah, but they totally cut his knees off with Triple H, who then, of course, did nothing to help Roman Reigns get over babyface, because he babyfaced himself the entire way up to the match. God bless you, Triple H. But, I mean, he did. I mean, he would come out, kick his ass, and do suck it. And the crowd would cheer for him. Imagine that.
Yeah. So
the thing is, too, that would have worked so perfectly, because Brock, they had nothing for Brock that year anyway. He was pissing around with the Wyatt family for a couple of months. When they decided that was going to be horrible, they stuck him in that feud with Ambrose that went nowhere.
That's what made me kind of think of it, is that Brock was very miserable. That Ambrose feud did no favors for anybody.
No.
It certainly did no favors for Ambrose. And it did nothing for Brock. Like, Brock beating Ambrose literally did not change one iota of perception about Brock, because it wasn't entertaining. It didn't make you like Brock Lesnar anymore. It was just a bad match, a bad feud.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think the split crowd dynamic, which they would have probably had still in Texas, let's not kid ourselves, it would have been fine, because I think people still weren't as fatigued with the Brock Lesnar character in 2016 as they are now. I mean, now you hear it. They talk about, we're going to strip Brock Lesnar. The crowd pops.
They don't even want to see him. They don't even want to see him wrestle. So, like, they don't even care about a title defense at this point. That was bad news when we got that reaction. Yeah.
Which brings me to my next point. Are we sure Brock Lesnar's losing the title at SummerSlam?
I'm not at all.
No.
I'm convinced he's going to win.
Yeah, I think, and the kind of, well, what's the elephant in the room, is Braun Strowman too. Which, you talk about bad booking of alleged top babyface Roman Reigns. If they have Braun, like, usurp him, and he leaves SummerSlam with the title, that's like, I mean, what do you do with Roman Reigns at that point?
Yeah, no, that's like what we got into back at Money in the Bank when we talked about how Braun really doesn't need that gimmick. And if they were just going to do Braun Lesnar and build to that as a straight match, that would be so much bigger than what they're doing right now.
Yeah. Look, I like Roman Reigns. I'm like, Liam, I like Bobby Lashley too.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking forward to Roman Lashley a lot because it was a fresh matchup. And quite frankly, I like the idea of Lashley Lesnar too. Again, fresh matchup. He's we talk about seeing these same matchups all the time. Say what you will about Bobby Lashley. He's new. Or, he hasn't been around for 10 years, so he's new. The match with Roman felt fresh. I think, you could do the whole MMA thing with him and Lesnar. That feels fresh. It's good. But we said this on the program months ago, and not to feed into this, but the best story Raw could have told kind of after we got over the debacle that was WrestleMania and then the greatest Royal Rumble ever where Roman didn't win again. The best story Raw could have told at that point was, because you could see Seth heating up, is get him into that challenger's role for Brock, and Roman costs Seth the match, whether it's him as like the Money in the Bank guy. I think that would have been an interesting way to bring it all around from WrestleMania 31.
Yeah.
And, Roman gets the title that way and does the quote unquote full-on heel turn, although I don't think you change his character in any way, because then the audience will be like, want to cheer him because you basically did what they wanted you to do with him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I look at the lay of the land, and the fact that they've announced that Lesnar's going to be there the next day on Raw is after SummerSlam is kind of curious. It's just that to me, from a functional perspective, that almost reads to me like Lesnar's going to win. And then he's going to come out the next day and brag about the fact that he's going to UFC as the champion, and Braun is going to cash in and win it. And then Roman, if he does have a heel turn in him, which, God knows if they're going to do it will be on Braun.
Yeah. I could see that.
This is a lot more interesting than I thought it was 20 minutes ago, by the way. I just think that the issue is that, and look, we went off last week on Extreme Rules, Ryan, on the post show. about these fan reactions and stuff. And you can't chase the pop with these people. You can't. But there still is the issue. And you know, you read the Twitter feed, it's not just these typical anti-Roman smarks I'm talking about. Even the defenders of Roman are just like, you know, I'm not looking forward to this anymore. The same people who were like, all right, going into Mania, we're like, Roman's finally going to beat Brock. We're going to get this out of the way. You know, we can build Raw around Roman as champion fully and move forward. That crowd is just as fatigued as anybody now.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think we can take any Brock loss for granted at this point, because
especially because it made a lot of sense having him. I mean, I guess you're taking a risk if he goes into the Cormier fight as WWE as the Universal Champion loses. You're taking a risk there, but we talked about the long game for Vince. What a thing it would be is if Lesnar as the Universal Champion wins that fight, and then you've got Lesnar under contract for one more match, and you can beat him when he's holding the UFC title.
Yeah, I see it more that direction. I've seen arguments on both sides of this, and I feel like, you know, the people that say, well, he could be WWE champion, get his ass kicked. I don't really think that really matters that much, you know, because the possible gain of Brock being heavyweight champ, UFC heavyweight champion, and Universal champion is just so gigantic that I can totally see Vince just wanting to roll the dice and see if it happens. I know Brock's going to be the underdog, but you know, it could happen. You never know. So yeah, I'm also not certain he's going to lose the title, just because every time we've got to a point where we think Brock's for sure losing, he doesn't lose. So I can't believe entirely he's going to lose it.
And there's the chance of getting Daniel Cormier on WWE TV in the build of the fight and getting those eyeballs. I think it's a trade-off Vince is willing to play.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong, though.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. I think that's Vince McMahon likes to take risks, and that could be a risk worth taking. You see any possibility that happens, Liam?
Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about kind of the Vince mentality and just kind of looking for that moment of Lesnar and Cormier doing a pull apart over the barricade on Raw or something like that. And there's just a nagging part of me that thinks, you know, they didn't even mention it on Raw when they did that thing in the cage at UFC. Mm-hmm. Like it is, you know, it's like that to me sounds interesting as hell, but I just don't know if Vince's mentality, especially with the current lay of the land where they came out trumps on the TV deal over UFC, and they're going to kind of, again, the perception game, they're feeling like the hotter product, at least when it comes to the television industry. I just don't know that they're going to really want to help them that much.
Yeah, it's a good counterpoint.
It is true, yeah. I mean, I think an objective person might look at it as, you know, helping each other, but at the same time, if you're objectively thinking about when has Vince McMahon ever done that?
Yeah, exactly. It's all very kind of one-way traffic with Vince on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he did, you know, have that glorious working relationship with both Smoky Mountain and USWA in 1993, but, you know, he didn't really...
And that underground relationship with ECW, let's not forget.
Yeah, but his guys never were allowed to look worse on a national basis. I mean, Lawler...
Yeah.
You know, there were a lot of guys that went down to USWA in the summer of '93 and would lose to Lawler, including Brett. But, you know, that was not seen by the WWE audience.
Yeah, that's true. Well, maybe it's more intriguing than we're giving it credit for, because there's all these spin-off possibilities that could happen depending on how this all shakes out. But SummerSlam's going to be difficult. The long game could end up being pretty good, pretty interesting. Maybe we'll turn around in 6 months and Kyle can give his patented "Vince McMahon has done it again" quote.
Yeah, I think the only thing we're sure of is it's probably going to be a negative reaction for the main event in Brooklyn, no matter what they do. The crowd is going to be annoying, and perhaps justifiably so. And I don't know. But other than that, I don't know. Brock could be the champion when all's said and done. Or like Liam said, he could lose it the next night on Raw at the cash-in. I don't know. There are a lot of guys. And I don't know. And there's 3 different guys we've mentioned that could potentially, you know, besides Brock, that could be the Universal Champion 24 hours later.
Yeah, and I just think that even though it was originally kind of speculated, the worst case scenario is Roman wins and Strowman cashes in immediately on Roman, because then you just completely eliminated the entire thing. That sounds like such a horrible plan. But and if you do that, you have to turn Roman heel. There's no other way around it. That cuts his nuts off for good if you do that.
That's the final testicle right there.
Yeah, I mean that's a complete evisceration of your babyface, and it's also a minimization of Brock losing.
Yeah, which is what was the. So I've been waiting all these years for this big climactic moment. If you're just gonna, kind of hand job it away moments later.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. I can see him doing the cash in just to try to send people home happy, but man, that would be another disservice to Roman Reigns. Just really, really bad stuff. So we will see Monday night. We'll have a lot more answers when we see how that match shakes out. I did want to look at the rest of the SummerSlam card. Just kind of.
Does anyone? Oh, just one thing. Does anyone think Lashley is going to be the champion 2 days after SummerSlam? I think that's the least likely of the four guys. That's the least likely, I believe.
Yeah, I do too. I as much as kind of the idea of the build-up between Lashley and Lesnar interests me, I really just, how ridiculous is this that you have to think with this mindset? But the fact that he beat Roman convinces me that he's not going to be anywhere near the top line next SummerSlam.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I had read that one of the big reasons they brought Lashley back was because they wanted to do the match with Brock with the MMA tie-in and everything. So since he beat Roman and they're not probably going to do it, it's just kind of counterproductive. I don't know. Just to go back to Reigns and Lesnar yet again. The other matches, some of them are either heavily being implied or you can kind of see where they're going. I just kind of jotted down a list here where I think the SummerSlam card stands. Well, the rumor is AJ and Samoa Joe. We talked about the Lashley, Roman, Brock situation. It looks like from SmackDown, Bryan and The Miz, they were probably going to get that. Maybe a triple threat with Orton, Hardy, and Nakamura. If they do that, then I would say the odds of a triple threat in the Universal title are very much diminished. Rousey and Bliss, Carmella, Becky Lynch, maybe like Ziggler and Balor, perhaps Rollins and McIntyre, and there's this rumor out there that Cena and Taker could wrestle. You guys have any others to add to that list?
God, that last one can't happen.
Yeah, that was the last rumor on the Undertaker at SummerSlam. That's what I had heard, but I haven't seen it in a while.
An interesting thing is if Lashley is not in the Universal title match at SummerSlam, what do you do with him?
That was another question I had as we're going on that discussion is, where do you put him? I don't know.
Like, the only other guy he could work with is, like, Braun.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't know if that match makes sense. Other than it's just, like, two big hosses that like to fight and are both at the main event level on the brand. I mean, I guess you could always find some sort of storyline, but... I
mean, there's always Owens, I suppose.
Yeah, he's a guy who, could take some time off, in my opinion. Like, I like Randy Orton. Like, as I was watching him beat down Jeff Hardy on SmackDown this week, I couldn't help but think it wasn't a ton of time off he took, but even just that little bit, it just freshens guys up, man. There is nothing wrong with giving these guys 6 weeks, 8 weeks off to heal up some injuries and come back fresher. I think that helps. So, and I think it would definitely help Kevin Owens.
Yeah, I agree. I think Kevin's been doing the same thing for so long now in the same role with the same look, the same, and I like him a great deal, but he's kind of exhausted pretty much all of his options at this point, and it feels like his momentum is not what it once was. And this is the time now when you start to think, you know what, maybe just kind of get him away from the scene for a while.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of that element of surprise that's missing so much in the wrestling industry these days. Like back in the day, you had the jumps between WWE and WCW. I guess WWE has done this a little bit with the brand split when people go back and forth. But when you take a guy off television, they come back unexpectedly. It's pretty rare in wrestling these days when you get surprised when someone comes back. It's usually kept under... it usually leaks out, I should say. But when they keep it under wraps, it's always a cool moment. And I agree, it brings back that element of surprise, makes it more interesting, freshens up guys. And Orton definitely benefited because he was super stale too. And Orton's way better as a heel. Do we all agree?
Oh God,
Yes.
Way better.
I think he would agree too.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those deals where he just naturally comes across as a heel. He prefers to be a heel. That he said that in interviews. The issue is, aside this podcast aside, people like him. People like cheering for him.
You mean the podcast that has done the show titled "The People versus Randy Orton"?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Another guy who could be coming back is Dean. I could almost see, do they do like Seth and Dean against Drew and Dolph in a tag match or something like that?
Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah.
I can kind of see that coming.
And maybe Dean even can turn it. I don't know.
Yeah, man.
I don't know. You got to put the IC title up though on the second biggest show of the year, don't you think?
Do you? See, I actually would argue against it because there's so many freaking title matches that, we've criticized it before. In this New Japan, this criticism is valid too. You get these cards where there's like 8 title matches.
Mm-hmm.
And a title match just doesn't have the importance that it certainly once did. And even as of a couple years ago, maybe. That's the issue with the brand split.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, and this is kind of going to segue into another match that we kind of talked about as a potential SummerSlam, is that don't you think that when these guys go away, they usually come back with a bit of a purpose too? They usually bring them back for an angle, which benefits them so much more, because one of the things that this company has been atrocious at for the last 3 years now is bringing guys up, or bringing guys up from NXT, or bringing guys in. And for the first 3 months, even switching brands, for the first 3 months, they do nothing with them. Like, before Corbin got the Constable job, he was, fighting around with No Way Jose. And, Andrade Cien Almas has been doing nothing. His ice cold. They stick him in with AJ this week. And now we're in the situation where Joe, who's also done nothing since he's moved to SmackDown, is probably the best candidate to work with AJ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even he doesn't seem that inspired.
No.
He's been away from TV, but he hasn't really done it. They're building this up Samoa Joe, I've been wanting this and demanding this for a while now, and it's has he?
Yeah, we haven't seen that.
Yeah, no, and it's okay, he came back, he kicked Ty Dillinger's ass, everybody does that.
Yeah.
And before that, before he had kind of disappeared from TV, he did have a clean win over Daniel Bryan on TV. That was good. And then they went to that gauntlet and they did that great finish. Remember that? No one talks about this anymore. I love
count out
the finish they did with Bryan and Joe.
Oh, it's brilliant.
And in retrospect, why the hell didn't they do Bryan versus Joe at Extreme Rules instead of this silly Bludgeon Brothers nonsense that did nothing for no one?
Yeah.
And Joe could have beat Bryan with help from Miz, and there's your two your two matches. Joe's a contender now because he beat Bryan on a pay-per-view. Miz cost Bryan. There's your grudge.
Yeah, that fits together far better.
Yeah, I can't argue with you. Yeah, it seems like these are good matches, but the build to them or how they've got to them is kind of disjointed a little bit.
Yeah, even you think about Bryan and Miz. Okay, it's a match that we all wanted, but it seems that both guys are a lot cooler now than they were in April.
Oh my God, are they ever? Yeah. I was thinking the same thing when Miz is doing that pro, and I thought he was doing a good job too, talking about how his comeback's been a bust, his career is going downhill, and it's like. When Bryan hits the ring and they're standing out there doing their thing, I'm just thinking to myself, man, if they'd have just done this when they moved over, this would have been hard. This would have felt really like there's great energy that people have this need to see Bryan beat up Miz, and it doesn't really feel like that need's really there anymore.
No, they got to do something to ignite it a little bit for sure.
Yeah, the crowd responded pretty strong still when Bryan, did the knee to the the local indie talent that they had there doing the. The guy who was just like the bodyguard for Miz for that segment. But it doesn't feel quite as hot as it was. People were fiending for this when Miz was forced to come over in the Superstar shakeup. And you know what it is? it's because what they've done with Bryan so far, the two programs have not really accomplished, I think, what they wanted. And both, to be fair, were out of WWE's hands. You had Big Cass is, big ass, basically, and shot his career in the foot. Okay. And then, something that, came out after we actually recorded our post show, for those of you who listen to that, is Kane was injured going into Extreme Rules. And so you really couldn't do what you wanted, even if they were going to lose anyway, with Team Hell No. It was just kind of anticlimactic because Kane couldn't do anything. So I think that the fact that program was kind of a bust, Bryan got good matches out of Big Cass. I was personally emotionally invested in both of them. But because that really didn't go anywhere, and, the guy's out of the promotion, I think that only feeds the idea that, well, they probably should have just gone straight to Bryan and Miz first. Because what they did with Bryan hasn't really meant a hill of beans, quite frankly.
No. And the Bludgeon Brothers are continuing their record, unfortunately, as a team that anybody that works with them comes out cooler on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
True.
So I don't know if you guys saw this. There was, a live report, multiple live reports, obviously. People who were there at SmackDown last Tuesday said the dark match was Usos in the bar, and it was, really good. And I forgot who it was that tweeted this, but they were spot on when they said, you talk about two of the big losing acts from the Superstar Shakeup. I mean, the Usos in the bar are two of the great teams in this promotion's history, not just present day.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you called the Bar the greatest tag team of all time on this program.
No, the Usos.
You called the Usos that, yeah. Someone called the bar. Was that Justin? Someone once, I thought, said on this show.
Yeah, so I peed in Justin's cereal a little bit when I made the case that the bar is significantly better than the club. And because my whole argument was, it's like, well, if you're asking why is the club not higher on the pecking order, and this was an argument just that was made at the end of 2017, the frame of reference. I was like, the bar is just better, and they basically, kind of are the same team.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like, but the bar is great. The Usos are great. Yeah, they just, the Usos were totally sacrificed in that feud. The Bludgeon Brothers and are much colder than they were 6 months ago.
Yeah, no, I agree on Bryan Miz, though. That's, they've been building this match for 2 years, and the WWE video department's going to have to do a hell of a job bringing back some of that stuff, because it's been so long ago now. And I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will, because they're always great at that.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, the feud now finally being, kick-started. I guess it would have started with that Miz TV segment with Team Hell No when Miz started, kind of running down Bryan. Is that when this feud officially kicked off?
They kind of kept it when they did the gauntlet where Miz pinned Bryan, which is again a great little touch where it's like, okay, so that's he gets to say that he's beaten him. But again, to be quite honest, that's one of those things where even though on paper it sounds like a good idea, I didn't like them doing that. Even though in theory it gives them something that the Miz can say, it really isn't all that important to what Miz is saying right now. So why did they do it? They just kind of I'm a big fan of when you've got two guys who you're going to build a match towards, you don't let them touch each other for a long time. You don't let them touch before if you can help it until the feud really gets rolling. Because again, that creates that desire to see them clash. And I think by doing this kind of slow moving into it that they've done with Bryan and Miz, where they've kind of interjected the Bludgeon Brothers and all that stuff, I don't think that's helped. I don't think that's created more tension for these two getting together. I think it's dampened it because they've seen in this kind of slow drip feed of Miz and Bryan when it's not building towards anything, and it really doesn't matter what's happening. And I don't think that helps. Yeah,
well, the problem is that nothing they've done between Mania and now has been that good.
No,
it'd be one thing if both of them were winning and they were on these divergent paths right into each other, right?
Yeah.
If you found intriguing things. But they really haven't. I mean, Miz is really not done anything. I mean, he was, he lost to Rusev. He lost to Jeff Hardy on TV, and it's fine. I mean, guys do jobs. But, I just feel that he was a lot hotter, post-Mania, and he lost to Seth Rollins. I mean, Miz has just been doing a lot of jobbing, quite frankly, since Mania. So, You know, that's the fact that Miz didn't interfere at Extreme Rules, I think, is very odd. And the reason for it is he was part of MLB's All-Star Weekend, which is a big opportunity, but at the same time, it's like, man, Miz costing Bryan something tangible, like a match, I think would have been a much better way to kind of officially kick off the feud, as opposed to just kind of that out of nowhere promo he did on Tuesday. Out of nowhere might be might be too harsh, but you know what I'm saying? Like, all of a sudden it's like Miz is like, all right, now I'm ready to talk Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, I wonder how long they knew Miz was going to be in that softball game. Because I got to assume maybe at one point that was the plan on how they were going to lose the title match at Extreme Rules. Because that logically would make the most sense, like you said, that he's cost him something tangible like the tag team championships. But you can't fault Miz for taking up on that opportunity. Hell, he won MVP of the softball game, as he told us about on Tuesday night. So
remember that great softball game that they included on the Coliseum home video before SummerSlam '94?
I was just
God.
Because the WWE season never ends.
Yes.
During
Kevin
the baseball
Nash,
strike.
Nash wearing the fanny pack, playing first base.
Oh yeah. I might have to go back and watch that now.
Yeah, I love how Savage, you had heard, like, you know, those who like follow that stuff back at the time knew Savage, had the baseball background. I know I did. And it was great watching that. And he like just jacks one out of the park. It like confirms like these stories. You're like, oh God, Randy Savage played minor league baseball. Yeah. And then like they show Savage comes to the plate and he just cranks one over the fence. You're like, that is sweet.
Yes.
I think actually that was the show. Obviously, he didn't wrestle on that show, but that was the kind of the jump start for me when I realized that Randy Savage's right hand punch was thrown like a fastball. He kicks the left leg out first and does the right overhand. It's like, holy crap, very baseball centric offense here from Randy Savage.
Very true, and I've never thought of that
either. But holy crap!
Look out for it next time.
I can see it in my head right now, and that is exactly dead on. I would have not. I never ever put that together before. Nice, I like it. Good take. Another thing that maybe we did see coming, or at least we talked about it on this program, was a NXT Championship movement before NXT TakeOver. So at the NXT tapings last night, I guess tune out if you don't want the spoilers, we did have Tommaso Ciampa win the NXT title from Aleister Black, who we've been talking about being kind of a transitional champion maybe at this stage, that his championship run just hasn't been as good as maybe we had hoped for or expected. And so this does get us another edition of Ciampa Gargano, this time a triple threat at TakeOver Brooklyn IV with Aleister Black also involved. And so they did find a way to keep the Ciampa Gargano feud going and ramp it up a bit by making this a championship bout. Kyle, how excited / surprised were you to see Ciampa walk out of the tapings the champion last night?
Surprised, none.
Yeah.
Not at all. There was a straw when they announced that match as taking place at Full Sail and not Brooklyn. I think there was a lot of people who were like, okay, they're going to probably change the title. And quite frankly, them going to a three-way at Brooklyn didn't surprise me either, because what were you going to do with Gargano otherwise? It was then, Gargano either makes it a triple threat or he's left off the card entirely. So, I can't help but think, though, I brought this up before with, as fired up as I was in the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans at the end of that TakeOver, one of the greatest shows I've ever been to live, maybe the greatest.
You're just rubbing this in because I wasn't at the show.
No,
and I was across town at ROH, which went freaking 6 hours long.
No, I'm not rubbing in. Gargano Ciampa's been a great feud, but I can't help but think, based on how that match ended in New Orleans, if it would have been better just being left at that, and if the brand itself would have been better keeping the title on Almas, because certain, as Liam pointed out so astutely, hadn't done much on SmackDown since he'd been brought up. Now I know plans change, and I guess if you listen to some people, they did have him tabbed to be the U.S. champion, but that didn't happen. But if they had just kept Almas down there as the champ, Black could have gone up to the main roster. and had Gargano just chase Almas for the title and get that win, because that was a red-hot program. And they did kind of put a bow on the house shows here in Cleveland. I know with the mixed tags, they had Gargano and Candice LeRae beating Zelina Vega and all around the horn. But I wonder if that would have kind of been better.
Yeah, I could see it. Do we think, by the way, I was just thinking about this as you're going through Aleister Black going up the main roster. Is Aleister Black a character that works better on the main roster than NXT? Kind of like Elias, for example?
I don't think so. I really don't. I fear for him on the main roster, to be quite honest. I think that a lot of the shortcomings that have been exposed by him as the champion are going to become multiplied tenfold on the roster, because with Aleister Black, to me, the charm with him in the early days was that they didn't treat him like everybody else necessarily. He didn't really talk all that much. And I think that the more they've kind of integrated him into the usual pattern of how they book with him as the champion, which is what they do. They're not flexible for guys. They make everyone fit into the same one mold. I think that he's going to become another guy that just hangs around the middle. I think that he's going to be Finn Balor, but less popular.
Finn Balor is a good comparison, because when I say that, I'm thinking kind of about his entrance. You know, like so much emphasis on the main roster, especially is on the entrances, and he has a cool entrance. But Balor has a cool entrance too, but he hasn't really, like the demon entrance. But that hasn't really been taken advantage of on the main roster too much. Well, Kyle.
And guys have to do something beyond the end. You can't just rely on an entrance. I mean, we've seen. I mean, how many guys had these cool entrances in NXT, and they're like, and that's what they rely on the main roster. It's like, okay, cool entrance. Now just do whatever. Nakamura, Balor, Bobby Roode has been like. Now, Bobby Roode, to be fair, isn't that great. Like, he was another guy who I was warning friends elsewhere. They were like, this guy is ready-made for the main roster, Dom. And I'm like, be careful what you wish for.
Well, he has to be a heel eventually. Like, makes no sense as a face. Yeah.
Them bringing him up and turning, like, because he was never a babyface in NXT. Him just coming up to the main roster as a face for no reason and, like, was odd. But, and Aleister Black, you're right. He could be reduced to just another great entrance because they don't play to the individual strengths. What Liam said is absolutely accurate. It wasn't just the not talking. It was when it first started happening, you could see this. People didn't like when he started to have to sell. It was a thing where he got real over because he wasn't selling for anybody. And to be fair, I mean, a lot of guys can get over that way. I mean, I remember 20 years ago having a conversation with a friend of mutual friend of ours, Liam, Rick Morris, about, Taz. Oh, why don't they just do Taz? Why don't they just do the ECW Taz in here? It's like, what do you want him to, like, fucking suplex the Undertaker? Really? like I could come up with 10 guys who could would get over if they could just no sell the Undertaker. And I mean, that's a ridiculous example. But, like, it's like, well, why does Taz is the guy who just no sells everything? Because you liked it in ECW? And NXT, it's the same way. Triple H, to his credit, plays to the individual strengths on that brand. That doesn't happen on the main roster, which is why I always guard against people saying, get this guy to the main roster pronto. That hasn't really always been the best.
And Aleister, maybe a protected version of Aleister could be, a key player, but I just see him like I've always seen Balor, and I know that, Justin's not on the show, so this will kind of help because he's not here to kind of argue it, but to me, both of them are guys that they're top of the middle or bottom of the top. I don't see them, WWE taking that. There's a difference between guys who are great in that position and the guys who are great on top. And there is a transition. And I think, the momentum with Aleister, I think, changed as soon as he got there.
Yeah. I think with Balor, like when I was going through the SummerSlam card, him and Ziggler would be a great IC title match. But I also noticed in that triple threat on Monday, I mean, the crowd, like we've talked about on the show, how he's lost a lot of steam. Maybe Justin doesn't agree, or he's just gritting his teeth as we talk about it. But when he was close to winning that match, that crowd was exploding. Like, he still has a huge fan base out there for sure.
Oh, okay. So the Justins or whoever, how you doing, Justin? Iowa's finest. This may not be considered like the greatest compliment if you're a big fan of Finn Balor, but it should, in my opinion. We talk about top of the bottom of the top, Finn Balor would be a great babyface Intercontinental Champion.
Oh yeah, absolutely
yes,
he would.
yes.
He'd be to me. That's his role.
Yeah, that's not a slight. Like, I don't think you can build the Raw brand around him. We haven't seen him as a heel. I'm and people are like, well, he was the Universal Champion. It's like, man, there were some extenuating circumstances there. Reigns was still being punished for the suspension. They fought Rollins when he came back and didn't want him to be a babyface, then did anyway. And it's totally changed Rollins' career for the better. But, Balor kind of came up at this great time for him to come up when it's like, all right, we just got to try something new. And he was the flavor of the month that month.
No,
if Finn Balor came up literally any other month in WWE history, he would not be a former Universal Champion.
No, absolutely.
No, and I think it is a great spot for him because they've really successfully kind of made that into the workhorse title again, and Balor's a great worker between the ropes, and I think he could thrive in that role. I'd love to see him win the Intercontinental title at SummerSlam. I think him and Ziggler would have a great match. So
I mean, and he was in the mix at Mania. The only issue is Seth Rollins was just simply a better option.
Yeah.
The role that Finn would be playing as the babyface Intercontinental Champion was just better played by Seth Rollins.
Yeah, no, I think Rollins needs to be moved into that Universal title picture like soon before, they haven't really capitalized on all the steam he's had this year. But then Balor makes sense to kind of replace him in the IC division, I think.
Yeah, and just kind of circle this all the way back to Black. I mean, to me, that, and the three-way we're looking at for the NXT title, I always think that's kind of the exposure point of these guys like Balor and Black, where, as good as they are, there is always a better option because there is always somebody that's that little bit more complete than they are, whether it's charisma, whether it's promos, whatever it is, whether it's personality, however you want to phrase it. I know that you're a big fan of Grin Balor and his smiling Diesel.
Smiling Finn.
Smiling Finn. Yeah, it's like, there's always going to be a better option than a guy who doesn't really feel like they are the whole package. And to me, Gargano, for a long time, you could see it coming. He was a better option.
So I'm glad you brought that because now we can focus back on NXT, which I think was the bullet point we were supposed to be on. Last night, if you read the spoilers, and I always follow JJ Williams just to give it, he's a guy, Jacob Cohen. They're always there at Full Sail, and they do a good job putting the spoilers on Twitter. Both of them noted that when Black laid out Gargano with the black mass after the triple threat was announced, there were chants of "you deserve it" at Gargano.
Really?
Yes, which is very interesting because Gargano, again, if you don't want to be spoiled, well, I guess it's too late, but, Gargano played a role in the finish in Ciampa beating Black. And so maybe it was a little bit of that, but it's very interesting the way they've set this up, this triple threat with the two babyface challengers. We're really going to learn, I guess, who the NXT audience prefers in that top babyface role.
Which which to me would be a gamble I wouldn't take, especially because you've got Gargano coming off doing, what was, even though it was a hell of a match, the mega job in terms of just, he's beating the hell out of Ciampa and the Ciampa just beats him. And that's kind of not a very, when he's handcuffed, that's not a very sympathetic way to lose, really. So, you go from that to costing the other babyface, who people still like, even though I don't think they like him as much as Gargano. I think that when it comes time for the show in Brooklyn, I do think they'll side with Gargano. But yeah, the way that they put it together on TV, where he ends up costing the other babyface, and he's coming off a position of not being all that sympathetic himself. Yeah, not the best way to do it, I don't think. But say, they'll get there and we'll see how it plays out in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I said post-Mania when I was sitting there. If it's me, and it's not, and it probably shouldn't be, okay, but if it's me, Gargano was the babyface you build NXT around. He's your top babyface. Certainly coming that night in the Smoothie King Center, there was no doubt about it in my mind. But I'm walking home with my buddy Chad. I'm like, it's odd. They come off this incredible show. Gargano's clearly this incredible babyface you should build around, but they've got a babyface champion now who you just crowned. And it goes back to that talking point that I thought that was very odd. And I know I wasn't the only one who raised that it seemed like a no-brainer that Gargano was the babyface you build around, but you also just crowned a separate babyface as your new NXT champion. And I think I'm very interested to see how that plays out now that chicken has kind of come home to roost, where you've got the two of them and the audience is, are they going to explicitly side with one of them in this match?
Yeah, I think that there's another discussion we could have on this that we could spin out. It probably could be its own show, is how hard it is to remain a top babyface in pro wrestling today before the fans turn on you. And I don't think they're going to completely turn on Johnny Gargano, but to stay popular before some of the fans revolt, whether it's like kind of the smarky thing to do, that it points to like how special a reaction like that Daniel Bryan gets is, where he's pretty much universally loved. Like, it's so hard in wrestling to keep that going for years and years anymore, and they'll turn on almost everybody. So I don't think they're turning completely on Gargano, but that is interesting because he has been like this top babyface where they would chant "You deserve it" after the match, even with how that match ended.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I mean, even you're right with Bryan. What a mark in his favor. Because, maybe sometimes it's not as hot as it should be, but Daniel Bryan's always cheered every single time he comes out.
Yeah.
And that's very hard to do in 2018 wrestling.
Yeah. And again, though, I think, as much as a mark in his favor as it is, it does still hark back to that point. It's that the theme of the podcast and maybe the theme of wrestling currently is, man, they don't do a great job. I mean, especially because I'm looking at these 98 Raws and 99 Raws a lot with Steve Austin currently, and obviously it's not, you can't always relate things back to then. But you look at how much they protect the top guy in Austin then, where anytime he lost, there was always a built-in reason, and he always got his heat back pretty much immediately. And it's like now we're in this environment where they'll have Gargano get pinned even though he's got the guy handcuffed. We'll have Roman Reigns lose a Universal title match to Kevin Owens at the Royal Rumble, then get number 30 the same day, and then get eliminated as well. Can you imagine if they did that to a guy like Austin, like a real top, the guy they protect as a top guy? They don't protect anyone like a top guy.
What a comment. You're right. If you don't like Roman Reigns, go back and hit the 10-second button and listen to what Liam just said. Because could you imagine them doing that to Steve Austin?
No, they would never do it in a million years, ever. They would not do it. They wouldn't even conceive it. Austin would just laugh at him because there is a way you protect the top guy, and this company doesn't do it for some reason. I don't know why, but they like to have guys lose more than they should. And I think that again, the reason Strowman got over the way he did, it wasn't because he was so awesome. He's got all these things as a babyface that the other guys don't have. It's that he was protected.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of top guys, perhaps Kyle's most favorite top guy in professional wrestling history made his return to the WWE locker room this week.
Oh, no.
Hollywood Hulk Hogan is back.
Hold on, let's just put a bow on the NXT thing, because the TakeOver card is set.
Yes.
The entire card is set. Just, again, if you don't want to be spoiled, turn it off. But it's Shayna Baszler and Kairi Sane was already set at the last round of tapings for the women's title. It's going to be Adam Cole against Ricochet for the North American title. EC3 versus Velveteen Dream in your token non-title grudge match of the TakeOver card. And then Undisputed Era against Mustache Mountain for the tag titles in a rubber match. So there's your card. It's all set.
Should be good. 5-match show. Ricochet and Cole should have a really good match. EC3 Velveteen Dream. This guy to me is like the highlight of NXT right now.
This will be a real test, though. EC3 is going to be a real test for him.
Yeah, a little bit different style.
I'm not so high on EC3.
No, he's not going to be able to work like he did with Ricochet. So, no, he'll have to tone it down a little bit, but we'll see. So this Hulk Hogan deal, this happened at Extreme Rules. This was so bizarre the way this happened. So, Kyle, reportedly Hogan flew into Cleveland and then drove to Pittsburgh, because all these people saw Hogan on a flight to Cleveland. Why the hell did he not fly right to Pittsburgh? And he was flying coach. This guy is saving his money.
Well, I mean, that's an old carny wrestling trick. You fly a guy into a different city, a close city, and the idea is, he's just flying into Cleveland. Well, today's audience picked up on it immediately. They're like, Cleveland's not that far from Pittsburgh, and it isn't.
2-hour drive about.
Yeah, something like that. Depends, how quick you speed. But yeah, I mean, people picked up on it. It happened. So I was not shocked when the WWE's official Twitter feed announced Hulk Hogan is backstage.
Yeah. So he gives this apology to the WWE locker room, and a lot of people took issue with the apology because for many, I guess, from the reports that I've been reading, they felt like Hogan was more remorseful that he was filmed like without his knowledge. And he made a big point to tell the locker room, like, be careful what you say because you never know who's going to be recording you. Because he had made these racist comments on a sex tape that was recorded without his knowledge over a decade ago. So we've had people making comments. The New Day came out with a comment. Titus O'Neil.
Very well written.
Yeah, the New Day one is probably the best. Titus O'Neil kind of
very well
written what the New Day said. Yep. And Booker T was kind of on the opposite side of the fence, where he kind of was more welcoming, I guess, to Hogan coming back to the WWE. Now, we didn't think Hogan would be ostracized forever. He is unquestionably one of the biggest names in wrestling history. He's going to be brought back. You could see, speaking of Velveteen Dream, at the last TakeOver, he came out dressed as Hulk Hogan with the boas and everything. So we even talked about on that post show that night that or after Money at the Bank that we said, if this is kind of more evidence WWE is warming up to Hogan again, that he was allowed to do that. And the reports have been out there for months that Hogan might be coming back, and lo and behold, here he is. So we're going to throw it to each other here on how we feel about this. What do you think about the reports about his apology? Because obviously we weren't there, but it's been pretty widely reported on how that went and how sincere it was and what he said. I know Kyle has some thoughts on this. He definitely wanted to talk about it. What do you think, Kyle?
I think I need to preface a few things. Number one, I am not a huge Hulk Hogan fan. I never have been. Not only has Hulk Hogan, not only was he like not my favorite wrestler growing up, there have been times when he was very close to being my least favorite wrestler growing up. I'm not going to deny the man's accomplishments. He is, one or two, the first or second most important person in the history of the company. I mean, with Steve Austin. It doesn't, whatever you think, it doesn't matter. He's one or two. Okay. He's no lower than the second most important person in the company history. So yes, in that sense, he belongs in the Hall of Fame. But, I wanted to preface by saying he was never one of my favorites because emotionally, him being back in the W means very little to nothing to me, quite frankly. It's not, there were people who were very happy about it, and I suspect they were people, who grew up with Hulk Rules posters on their walls. That said, I value the opinion of people like, or I should say, I value people who are in the company, and certainly the New Day and Titus O'Neil, for obvious reasons, a lot more than some guy who jerked off to a Hulk Rules poster when he was 9 years old. Okay. Like, that
sounds like a personal story.
Okay. No, I mean, it's fine. If you're happy Hulk's back, that's great. Okay. It's your own personal call. But at the same time, I'm far more interested to hear what, guys like Kofi Kingston, guys like Titus O'Neil have to say. Because it's very interesting to me that they were not made privy of this beforehand. They didn't have to be. But if I was there, I probably would have gone to them first. Mm-hmm. I would have gone to not just them specifically, the entire, African-American workforce in WWE and been like, we're thinking of doing this. Your thoughts.
Right. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds kind of grandiose and silly, but, and I think it's key what you said and the umbrage that was kind of taken with what Hogan said that was expressed, particularly in Titus O'Neil's response, that Hogan seemed more apologetic that he was caught than for what he actually said. And that's a common thing. Look, I believe in second chances, okay? I don't think Hogan should be shunned forever, but he does need to be apologetic for what was said. not just because he got caught. That goes for anyone. Like when it comes to second chances, right? I mean, it's not the first.
Yeah.
That's kind of a key phrase when it comes for mea culpas, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, are you sorry you got caught, or are you sorry for what you did? And people who express remorse for what they did typically can be forgiven. Obviously, there are some, things which can never be forgiven. But, and this was bad. What Hogan said was really, really bad. And if, prominent African American members of the roster don't think he was sincere, then that is an issue. And that should be respected. I mean, some of the comments that were made and directed to Titus O'Neil and Kofi's post were disgraceful, in my opinion. Absolutely disgraceful from fans. I saw somebody, New Day, the real racist. Shut up.
Oh, God. I try to never read the responses to tweets because of this.
and I'm going to say something else, too. And I feel bad, actually, for saying this because, I know Glenn Moore, who does the podcast with Jerry Lawler. Jerry Lawler lampooning the day, like the PC culture right now, is like the biggest crock of shit.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, if it wasn't this PC culture, Hulk never would have been left. Stop. Okay, if Hulk Hogan wasn't an idiot and an ass, he would have never left the Hall of Fame, okay?
And a racist. Don't forget that part.
And a racist, yes.
Yeah.
And most importantly, a complete racist, yes. So, so I completely value, what I think. Hogan, it was really racist what he said. It was not, it was really like, hello, in a related story, the sun will come up tomorrow morning, okay? That said, if the WWE wants to bring him back, it's the company's prerogative, but at the same time, they better make sure that their prominent African-American employees are comfortable with it. And if they're not, then it is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it interesting how the original reports were WWE filmed this apology, and then after it started getting criticized, then the word changed to, no, we did not film this. Like,
maybe it was just an irony because Hogan was complaining about being recorded.
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, burn the tapes.
Yeah. Doesn't it feel to you, like when I kind of, and again, first of all, kudos to Titus, because as well written and as kind of perfectly straight to the point as Kofi's post was, Titus's was a little bit more head on, and he didn't really back away from it. So I was very impressed by that. But, I think that to me, this whole thing is just like, doesn't it feel like a misread, the way that they've played this, in the sense of they thought that time would heal this, and in reality, they may as well have just brought him in to do this speech the week after it happened, because the reaction's is the same today as it would have been 3 years ago, which is, if he's just going to say that, then that doesn't tackle the issue, and that feeling's still going to be there. And I don't think it's going to go away, to be quite honest, because, Hogan, publicly speaking, I mean, we've seen, I grew up in a racist neighborhood. I'm just used to throwing these words around. Like, these aren't the words of somebody who's sorry about what he did. The whole thing about, going to the Boys and Girls Club and throwing on his Wu-Tang Clan CD to get some points. That's, that doesn't actually resolve the problem. It's the problem is you fucked up. You came off like a complete racist and a douchebag, and you can either approach it completely head on and act as if you're honest and deal with it, the point. Or you can do what you've done, which is you try and buy some time, you try and get some PR brownie points, and you try and kind of slowly ease your way in and do what you've always done, which is deny when you're at fault. And that's what this is. And I think, thankfully, we're at a point now where everyone can kind of see through it.
Yeah, and talking about him and how he grew up and everything. Yeah, all these people that grew up around Hogan were like, I don't know what he's talking about. Nobody in our neighborhood used that language to talk about people. But yeah,
Hulk is the ultimate carny.
Yes.
Like, kind of play off what Liam just said. He's been the ultimate carny. He very much, he's a guy who he's a wrestler that is still operating under an old wrestling culture.
Well, don't you know, according to that Andre doc, he walked into the ring at WrestleMania 3 and didn't know if he was winning or not.
Like I said, what did I bring that up at the same time? Him and Bischoff are two lovebirds, man. Couple cards, of course they're friends.
Yeah. I mean, I also obviously don't think that Hogan should be banished forever. He has his place in WWE. He should have that second chance or third chance or whatever you want to call it. But I do have a problem with a guy who obviously doesn't feel remorse. And according to these reports and what he said, he clearly doesn't feel remorse. I mean, this kind of takes me back to the situation we all had growing up where you're apologizing for something to your parents and they're like, well, are you actually sorry or are you sorry because you got caught? And he's clearly, from what he said, sorry because he got caught. And so I think he has a lot of work to do at the locker room to get that respect back for sure.
Yeah, lecturing people on, make sure you're not being recorded.
Yeah, that should have never been mentioned at all. That should not have came up.
It's like, how about, taking time to learn about other cultures and, being respectful of them. Yeah. And not being racist towards them.
So as you guys all know, I said some really terrible racist things on a video a while back. So let me tell you about this guy who filmed it. Yeah. Come on. That's just ridiculous. Bubba the Love Sponge, man. There's a whole other topic.
And I'll be honest with you too, and an aside, I don't like that bullshit that Hogan did to Gawker either. I mean, Gawker was kind of foolish in its own right, but there's an excellent documentary out there kind of talking about the attack on the, while we're talking about attacks on the press and things of that nature, how the whole Hogan lawsuit was bankrolled by Peter Thiel. I can't even think of the name of the documentary.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's like a Netflix exclusive.
Yeah, David Bixenspan of Between the Sheets was on it. He was interviewed. And it was really good, and it's, I didn't really like that lawsuit either. So that's another mark against Hogan.
Yeah, no, that's why I thought it was kind of funny that he was riding coach on the airline to Cleveland because he supposedly got like $31 million or something like that from that lawsuit and the settlement.
Well, he had he had to pay Peter Thiel back.
I think the documentary is called Nobody Speak. I was Googling it right now.
Yeah, that's the one. I was racking my brain trying to think. It's good. Yeah, Nobody Speak.
Yeah, it's good. It's worth checking out. So. I think that about wraps it up, guys, for this week. Any other topics we want to throw out before we head off into the sunset?
I have a question for Liam.
Okay.
Shoot, man.
What caused England more pain? Was it Croatia or Shawn Michaels at One Night Only?
Oh, man. Well, I was in the crowd live at One Night Only, which I can. How do
I not know that? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, man, I can verify I was the only person in that building cheering for Shawn Michaels.
Oh, my God.
That was one of the greatest.
It wasn't your action figure that went down his pants, was it?
Oh.
It was not, no.
Oh, okay.
Oh, man. We were talking about that on our phones a few weeks ago. Kyle, you brought that up out of nowhere that you're watching that match. You guys must put this on right now. This is like the greatest heel work of all time. So we were all watching it.
Either that or the most unprofessional behavior I've ever seen in the history of pro wrestling. It's one or the
you
other.
Were like live texting. You're like, my God, he just put an action figure down his pants.
But he's a prick, but he's so good at being a prick. He's just, honestly, okay, so off the air, when that show was finished, you got Shawn on one side of the stage climbing up one side of the video wall. You got Hunter climbing up the other side of the video wall, and you've got the fans just throwing bottles at them to try and knock them off because they were so pissed. It was beautiful.
Oh, man. I would love to see that.
Oh, man. There's got to be a tape of it somewhere. It was fantastic.
Oh,
that's it kind of just I think the pay-per-view proper just goes off with them posing. You could see that they were relishing in the heat they were getting, but they don't show them crawling up when the pay-per-view goes off the air.
Yeah. No, they film everything. That's got to be in the archives. Maybe that can be a bonus on something.
They had a lot of problems. They got a couple house shows shut down in that era, DX, with all the stuff that he.
Oh yeah, Shawn refused to go out.
Arkansas, like in Arkansas and
Memphis.
Stuff. Yeah.
Yep. So, Liam, you mentioned a few minutes ago that you've been watching a lot of 1998 WWF television, and we know that's for your podcast. So, do you want to give our listeners a shout out to where they can catch Squared Circle Gazette?
Yeah, sure. So squaredcirclegazette.com, funnily enough, is probably the best place to go to kind of get the archives of every show we've ever done. So we've got all kinds of wacky shows on there. We've got like the Monday Night War timeline we've been doing, where we've been kind of going through month by month the Raws and the Nitros head to head, and kind of looking at the stories and the newsletters at the time, and kind of breaking down the way things went, which is kind of interesting when you look back at that stuff, because that's kind of the lens that, I didn't look through watching it live at the time. So when you kind of look back with kind of a bit more perspective about what was really going on, it's a really interesting take. And yeah, like all sorts of random topics and stuff. So a lot of fun. Squared Circle Gazette Radio is the show, and squaredcirclegazette.com is the place to get it.
Excellent. Well, I want to definitely thank you for coming back on the show. It was fun last time. It's great having you on again. We appreciate you addressing what's been going on in the media about your book. Where can our listeners find you on Twitter?
At Liam O'Rourke 86 is the place to go, and follow me there. And of course, as you mentioned before, the Brian Pillman book, Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk, Amazon.jp, Amazon.nz, Amazon.ca, Amazon.whatever.
There you go. Kyle, parting words this week.
Yes. So last week on the post show, I mentioned that Seth and Dolph was the third time a Intercontinental title match proper had closed a WWF pay-per-view. And we all knew Brett Davey was the one at SummerSlam 92 in Wembley. But there were four of us. None of us could come up with what the third one was. Now, there were instances of like Hogan versus Warrior where the IC was technically on the line, but a straight Intercontinental title match had closed a WWE pay-per-view 3 times. It bothered me, so I looked into it, and the answer is very cheap. It was In Your House, Beware of Dog 2, Goldust Undertaker, where they just did a redo of the matches that took place in the dark 2 nights previous in South Carolina. So that was not the actual scheduled main event of that pay-per-view. It was Sean Davey, obviously the In Your House, Beware of Dog. So that one really technically does not count. But that was the third instance of an Intercontinental title match closing a pay-per-view. It was Goldust versus The Undertaker in a casket match.
So like kind of sort of main evented.
Yeah, so really it's only been 2.
Yeah.
Seth and Dolph and Brett and Davey.
Okay. All right. Well, I did want to say, Liam mentioned Amazon. We do have a new way you can support the show. You've probably heard about this on other podcasts, but I want to throw it out there. If you decide to pick up Liam's book, before you do so, navigate to topropenation.com. There's a link there. There's a shopping link. You can go to Amazon US. You can go to Amazon UK. I got links up for both of them. It's just like a referral program through Amazon. So if we send shoppers to Amazon through our link, they'll kick back a couple of dollars of referral fee to Top Rope Nation. It will help us upgrade our audio, help us pay our hosting costs. If you guys tuned into the show a couple weeks ago, we did a live podcast, and we had some technical issues because we could not get all 3 of our microphones to work at the same time. So if we ever do that again, I definitely need to invest in a mixer. So if you want to donate to the cause, you go through Amazon, you go to that link, you're going to pay the same thing you would have paid if you just navigated to Amazon your own, but the podcast will benefit. So you can check that out at topropenation.com. We would greatly appreciate it. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn, Spotify, leave us a rating and subscribe. And we will catch you guys next Thursday night for episode 67 of the Top Rope Nation podcast. Have a good weekend. Take care.
Peace.